Uvanga Qaġġun Noorvik Minguranga Iñupiaq Iñupiaq Tatmik Suli Kukisana Asi Suli Fairbanks Mi Iñuranga. My name is Qaġġun Chelsey Zibell. I am originally from Noorvik, Alaska, and I am Iñupiaq, and my parents are William and Beverly Zibell of Noorvik, but I live in Fairbanks, Alaska currently. The first thing that comes to mind is uncertainty, because that's kind of how it's felt this whole time. Uncertainty about like, what is this disease? What does it do? And then how long is it going to stay? Are we going to be able to make it go away? And yeah, just a lot of uncertainty comes to mind. All right. So last year in mid-March, so I teach for the local university, and we were preparing for our spring break. And of course, we had been hearing about COVID, but it hadn't really kind of reached us at that point, at least not in Alaska. And then, so we went on spring break, and then the university decided to make pretty much everything either remote or just, not have everyone concentrated on campus. So the students were all sent home or most of them, there were some exceptions, students were sent home, and all of the classes were changed to distance delivery. So that was a big impact for my work, but also I don't think it negatively impacted me as much because I did by then have some experience with distance delivery teaching. And I had been wanting to make the classes that I teach available online, so that even though it was quite a big change, it brought about an opportunity to teach language in a different way. Yeah. So so I've been teaching remotely since last year, and my classes were very small, but the language classes especially have gotten a lot bigger. Last semester, the beginning Iñupiaq language class, so the first semester that you can take, the enrollment I think was 21, which is bigger than this class had been in a long time. And it was because, people who aren't in Fairbanks were able to take the class. They're mostly from Alaska, but I've had some students who are in the other parts of the United States. A lot of them have an Iñupiaq background and want to learn more about their heritage language, and about their culture, because of where they live, they're not able to experience that. But I do have some. I've had some students who, take the class just because they're interested in learning a different language, and I even have a student who is in the UK and just wanted to take Iñupiaq language and learn a different language. So that was really cool. I would describe it as, I think it depends on the effort that is put into the class, both from the instructor and from the students. With from an instructor's perspective, it's a lot more prep work, and it's harder, in a way, it's harder to, check in with students, make sure they're not like, making sure they're keeping on track with the material, especially for a class. If a class is completely online and there's no meeting time at all, it's especially difficult, I think, to just make sure that they're not falling behind, or to check in with their I guess their confidence in teaching or learning the content. And then for the students' perspective, which I have a little perspective on that, because I took a number of online classes, before, when I was a university student, and it does take a lot more focus and time management. And with language learning, I think it's especially challenging, because language learning is so community based. To learn a language, you need other language speakers or other language learners to effectively learn the language. So that has been challenging, because everyone is in different places, and so it's challenging to create a language learning community. My plan is to do both, actually. So one of the classes that I'm scheduled to teach in the fall is going to be a hybrid course. So there will be students in the class, physically in the classroom, and I'll be in the classroom too, but there will be, hopefully will be students who are signing in on Zoom and participating in the class in that way. And that was something that I had wanted to do even before the pandemic, because a lot of the education classes that I took were hybrid courses. So yeah, my plan is to teach hybrid courses, because I had recognized, before, as I said before, the class numbers were really low, due to a number of factors. Like not everyone who wants to take a language course is in Fairbanks, where I teach. And also not everyone is able to take the class at the time that it is scheduled. So having hybrid courses, I hope will further boost enrollment, and also having online classes as well, even though, like I said, it is challenging to teach a language completely online. It's something that I had heard from various people, asking, is this class going to be online? Because I can't, like, I work during the day, or I have other stuff going on, so I can't, be in a class at a specific time. So there is a need for online learning opportunities. So most of my students are university students, but it is possible to sign up as I think they call it a non-degree seeking student. So someone who just wants to take the class just to learn, and they're not necessarily looking for a degree. So right now there is, enrollment and tuition and things like that. And that's the next step that I've been thinking about, is what resources could be made for this language, like community resources that are available for free. Um, and then if someone wants to take the class for credit, then they can do that. That's something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I have made some resources, like some instructional videos that are fairly accessible. Like at this point, you need like the specific link. It's a little tricky to search, to just Google it. But that's something that's been on my mind, like what can we do to make language learning tools more available for anyone, like even people who aren't students. So from my perspective, I guess it depends on the part, which part of Alaska. There have been some rural communities that have been, greatly affected, like maybe not many deaths, even though, every single death is a tragedy. But in the region that I'm from, rural Alaska, there are already, a lot of people who have respiratory health issues, and when someone is sick and needs to be hospitalized, they need to be flown out. And if the weather is not good for flying, then they can't be flown out, and they might get worse, or there have even been some deaths because a person wasn't able to be sent to the hospital due to weather. But from rural, because of that, the response in rural communities has been very, very strict, because people, know that the medical facilities are far less than on the road system. And also, many places historically were severely impacted by epidemics, and people remember that and want to take as many precautions as they can. So from what I've heard, because both my parents work for the school in Noorvik, and my younger brother and his wife are both teachers. It has been very challenging because, as you mentioned before, the internet connection is, for most places, not very good at all. So teachers have been creating like packets for students to be sent home to students. And there's also just, being in school for many kids seems to be, and the school has a very positive impact on students. And when, that changes all of a sudden, I think that, it's very difficult for kids. And for my daughter, for most of this year, she was doing school online, like they sign in on Google Meet and do their different activities. But for someone her age, it's really difficult for her to focus, even though we're in the road system and we have good internet and we have resources. It was still difficult for her to focus on what she needed to do. When did she start? She started last month in person, and the school days are shorter, and they're doing social distancing and being as careful as they can. And I was very hesitant about sending her back to in-person school, But this year is her 6th grade year. So her last year in elementary school, and next year she'll be going to a different school. And I didn't want her to miss out on like all of the, the social part of being in elementary school. Yeah, and that one, just from my perspective, and I know that, it's different everywhere, and there are maybe stories that I don't know about, but at first, certain things were difficult to find, like cleaning supplies. When we first started going into lockdown last year, finding cleaning supplies, and I know there were other things that were difficult to find, like hand sanitizer. But I know that there have been, people impacted by, like there was a worry, like relating back to the schools, worry for kids who, they would get, 2 of their meals per day from the school. And there was worry that, that those kids would experience hunger, but the schools, stepped in and offered meals for free, which is really awesome. I don't know if it's more, and it's a little tricky to answer the question, because in Fairbanks, subsistence is different than, say, in Noorvik, where I'm from. I would say maybe for some, the importance of subsistence became more aware of it because of limitations that came with COVID. But for my family both back in Noorvik and my family here in Fairbanks, subsistence activities are important both in both communities, and have been since well before COVID. And yeah, so for us, I don't think it hasn't impacted it as much. But I think what maybe the realization that we had was like, wow, I'm really glad we have these skills and we know how to gather and hunt for certain resources. I think like for the elderly, especially, there, especially in rural Alaska, there's a great concern for our elders because they are the most vulnerable, and so we want to keep them healthy, but at the same time, I know it must be very difficult for them to be to feel isolated. And then for like family dynamics, like of course we haven't been able to really gather for a long time, and I mean, for me personally, I enjoy being home and I don't need to be around lots of people all the time. But it has been difficult to not see people who I want to see. I don't have specific numbers, but I know that like I've heard stories of like with kids being home, having, you know, both parents employed can be difficult, especially if the parents aren't able to work from home also, because not everyone has a job where they can stay home. And tourism, because I live in a place where, usually a lot of tourists come, that this past year, I noticed that there has been a lot less due to, restrictions and regulations. That it has been so different. So normal festivals that we would have, like the Festival of Native Arts, which is a university organized event, that was canceled last year because it was right around the time that the lockdown happened and where students were sent home. And another event, WEO, World Eskimo Indian Olympics, which happens in the Fairbanks community every year, that was canceled last year. And I'm trying to think of the Alaska Federation of Natives was this past fall was done completely online. And then for dance practices, the dance group that we were a part of, that I'm still a part of, I'm actually the faculty advisor for the Iñupiaq dance group now. And we've been having Zoom practices, but it's been difficult to have a lot of people signed in, I think, because like it's not in person, people forget that it happens, or it just doesn't feel the same. Like with dancing, when you're dancing with other people, you kind of get energy from, being around other people and hearing the drumming and singing. And so that's been really different. Yeah, just really different. And I'm glad that we're able to do things online, but it doesn't quite feel the same. And we're hoping soon to maybe have some outdoor practices and see, just see how that goes. Yeah, it was I think 2 weeks ago about, and so that was really cool. Again, it just felt different because you're not there in person, but it was still good to see recordings from different groups and yeah, just see dances and hear the singing and the drumming. That was really nice. I think it depends. I've seen some places starting to have like I see people post on social media that they've started having practice together. And when it was warmer, I think some places did outdoor practices, but it depends on the community, because each of the different communities have their own like what status they are with COVID cases and their responses to that. Yes and no. I think one of the difficulties is, like I said, it's like different with every region and different with rural areas versus on the road system, and the regulations keep changing, and I feel like there are certain communities that have done really well about taking measures to ensure that there are as few cases as possible. And then there are I know there are communities where it feels like it hasn't been as effective, like here in Fairbanks, for example. Yeah, I felt like there could have been a lot more consistency and clarity as far as the response to COVID. I would have, so I think it was I want to say April or May. So the state, for the most part, had been in kind of a lockdown, like people stay home, work from home if you're able to, only go get the things that you need. And then very abruptly, the governor, opened everything up. And then after that, cases started rising. So I feel like that opening up shouldn't have happened so quickly. And I kind of understand the reasoning behind it. I know there was a lot of public pressure to do that, but at the same time, I don't think that was a good idea, especially with the rise in cases that happened afterwards. So for my specific community of Noorvik, I don't remember hearing a lot about devastating epidemics specifically in that community, but I know the region overall had been impacted in the past, and there are also things like tuberculosis for a while was a danger. And one of my great grandmothers, actually, when she was young, she had contracted TB and had to be sent away, and she survived, but people remember things like that. And that's why so many rural areas were very strict about who could come into the communities, travel regulations, like needing to get tested and things like that. I should have a better answer, but I haven't been keeping up as much with the specific numbers. I think if it's at least staying steady and not like spiking like it had been. And Alaska actually has done a really good job of distributing the vaccine. And so hopefully that will improve the situation. So with regard to COVID, when I first became aware of it, over a year ago, it was, at first it was like, oh, this is something that, is happening somewhere else, which is not a very good attitude to have. But at first it was, oh, there's this, thing happening in another part of the world. And then it came to the US, and this kind of sense of, like I said, uncertainty and kind of dread, like, is it going to come to Alaska? And, what's happening with this? And then when the lockdown happened, I I felt kind of more anxious about it because it just was something that I had never expected to experience in my life, where, everything is shut down um, and we're working from home and, schooling from home. And now I feel like the more that I know, I'm still, cautious, and I still have empathy for, people who are experiencing it, but I don't have as much, dread and anxiety about it. I think the thing that comes to mind is cooperation. So in my cultural community, my Iñupiaq community, at one point in the past decades, people came together and decided or talked about, okay, what are the things that we value as Iñupiaq people? And there's a whole list of things like hunter success, family, respect for elders, things like that. And one of them is also cooperation. And I've been thinking about how, in order to, keep other people safe, we need to each do our part. We need to cooperate with, what are the best ways to keep our elders and our families and our neighbors safe. So that is something that I think is important to continue on in, in any situation. I think not even just in a pandemic situation, but working together for the good of all people.